Eleanor Parker, the girl of 1,000 faces, Hollywood's mystery girl, Miss Paradox, a puzzle worth solving. These are just a few examples of different headlines written about Eleanor Parker over the years, and which emphasized how she, unlike many other actresses of her era, constantly defied any specific type or star persona or characteristics as an actress. That she remained a mystery throughout her career, a performer seemingly at home in every kind of role and unwilling to reduce herself to the limits of Hollywood's preconceived ideas about what she could and should do on and off the screen. But in a world where types and personas often dominate entire careers and legacies, this paradox of her work, this puzzle worth solving, also meant that professionalism and versatility were often seen as remoteness and inexplicability, a lack of appeal and understanding, which is often the basis for a truly long-lasting impact. And so today, her legacy appears mostly reduced to two aspects of her career: the Baroness in The Sound of Music, and the fifth nominee in the most famous Best Actress lineup of all time.
Eleanor Parker in Caged, Warner Brothers.
Obviously, this sets a career which brought her 2 more Oscar nominations and turned her into one of the first ladies of the screen during the 1950s, very short. Eleanor Parker was an actress who always valued artistry over stardom, who slowly worked her way up with neglectable roles in neglectable movies and then achieved a sensational breakthrough into the A-list of Hollywood with a highly unlikely role. And she did it all while remaining very much her own person, private and professional, unwilling to play any publicity games to get ahead. Today her body of work might not be too well remembered anymore, and in regards to 1950, a small movie like Caged obviously has to fight very hard to make any kind of impression against 2 of the biggest classics Hollywood has ever seen in the form of All About Eve and Sunset Boulevard, and the Best Actress winning comedy Born Yesterday. But Eleanor Parker deserves to be remembered as a unique talent who brought many different facets and dimensions of the characters she played to life, and who has a career that goes very much beyond the woman who stood in the way of Maria and the Captain. That's why my first 1950 video will cover Eleanor Parker's sometimes almost forgotten nominated performance from 1950 in more detail, to give it the attention it so much deserved, shed some light on the beginnings of her career, and explain how Caged placed her among the 5 Best Actress nominees of the year. On June 24, 1941, Eleanor Parker made her screen test for Warner Brothers. Only 2 days later, on her 19th birthday, she signed a contract with the studio. For her, it was the fulfillment of a wish she had been dreaming about since she was 5 years old: to be an actress. As a child, she imitated her favorite movie stars Greta Garbo, Norma Shearer, Anne Harding and Janet Gaynor, wrote stories and played them out in her parents' backyards, always casting herself in a leading role. She later remembered about these times: "The other kids weren't much interested, but that was alright with me. I just wanted to hear my own voice anyway." Unlike many other actors and actresses who had to overcome their family's doubts and resentments about dreams of Hollywood, Eleanor Parker's parents were very supportive of their daughter's ambitions, paying for voice and dance lessons and later enabling her to study acting. Eleanor earned her tuition for acting school with the most common acting job: waiting tables. "All I can remember was work, work, work. I accepted it as part of the price I had to pay." After completing her high school education, Eleanor Parker considered 2 options: the American Academy of Dramatic Art in New York or the Pasadena Community Playhouse in California. While the Academy of Dramatic Art might have a nobler ring to it, the Pasadena Playhouse was considered a famous hunting ground for talent scouts from all big movie studios, where for example also William Holden had been discovered. It therefore seemed like a much more likely entrance into the world of movie making, and so Eleanor Parker went west. Once appearing at the Playhouse, it in fact didn't take long for her to get the attention she wanted in the form of Warner Brothers talent scout Irving Cummin. There are different stories about what exactly happened. Some say that Cummin saw her on the stage and was immediately captivated by her silky voice, while other stories say that she was merely sitting in the audience and fascinated Cummin with her expressive eyes. Well, whatever it was, it would lead to the aforementioned screen test, and a contract with Warner Brothers. When discussing Oscar-nominated performances for my channel, there are usually two main career paths. One, an actress is brought to Hollywood specifically with the intentions to turn her into a full-fledged leading star. Might it be a promising newcomer from Europe, like Ingrid Bergman or Louise Reiner, or a celebrated stage performer like Patricia Neal or Barbra Streisand. Or they come to Hollywood as a standard contract player, not getting any material truly worth their time, but they slowly work their way up the career ladder to not only win an audience, but also respect and critical appreciation, like Susan Hayward or Joan Fontaine. Well, Eleanor Parker definitely belongs to the second group, starting her career neither in prestige movies nor in leading roles, but instead seen as one of many by Warner Brothers, definitely intended to be promoted as a talented and beautiful new face on the screen, but not given demanding, challenging or awards-worthy material. Instead, she was expected to make the most out of what she was given, elevate B pictures by sheer personality, and draw attention to lackluster projects with beauty, style, and hopefully some acting talent. But during the next 18 months, Eleanor Parker was only given a few opportunities to appear in front of the camera, 4 weeks to be exact. But she did not waste the time off camera and continued to study acting and appeared in many screen tests with other actors to gain experience, knowledge and confidence. There is acting, which I knew, and there is filmmaking, which you have to learn. Those early jobs were all good preparation for me. They taught me what not to do. I knew that if I trained myself properly, I'd be ready for the big break when it came. I never wanted to be a star overnight. I wanted to be a real actress rather than a personality. I believe you must prove that you have some talent, and if you work hard to improve, it will be obvious, and then no one can take away what is truly yours. 15 months would eventually pass between the day Eleanor Parker signed her contract with Warner's and her first movie appearance in the home front thriller Buzz's Roar. Again, Eleanor appreciated the opportunity she was given and used her time on Buzz's Roar to learn as much about the technical details of movie making as possible, but neither the role nor the overall project interested her very much. However, Buzz's Roar turned out to be a blueprint for her career during the next years. Nice girls in war and homefront pictures, for example in propaganda shorts like Man in the Sky, but World War II was omnipresent in basically every genre she did. Even a horror movie like The Mysterious Doctor had a war theme, as we learned that it was actually a Nazi who terrorizes the English villagers in disguise as a headless ghost. Eleanor Parker was basically the go-to actress for these kinds of roles. The good girl, the nice girl, the girl from next door, innocent, all-American, charming and lovable, constantly threatened by America's enemies. A different World War II related picture in 1943 was initially supposed to be a prestigious hit. Directed by Michael Curtiz, fresh off Casablanca, and co-starring Walter Huston and one of Eleanor Parker's favorite actresses, Anne Harding, Mission to Moscow was based on a 1941 book of the same name by Joseph E. Davis, former US ambassador to the Soviet Union. Jack Warner, who loved to spread the rumor that Franklin D. Roosevelt himself had asked for the movie to be made to support the Russian war effort, had high hopes that Mission to Moscow would follow the footsteps of other highly acclaimed and successful pieces of war propaganda in the tradition of Mrs. Miniver. However, by 1943, public opinion on the Soviet Union began to change in the US, and a movie praising Joseph Stalin was not what people wanted to see. In the end, Mission to Moscow was a critical and financial failure. Still, financial success or not, critical acclaim or not, Eleanor Parker survived bad reviews for her movies almost always unscratched and continued to gain attention for her charm and personality. While some reviews called her mostly decorative and advised her to return to drama school, the majority usually praised her work, calling her delightfully cast in almost all of her roles. In a negative review of one of her early movies, the New York Times simply wrote, "Eleanor Parker has our deepest sympathy," making it clear that she was not to blame for any of her movie's failures. Rather, she was their saving grace and the only reason to see them. However, Eleanor Parker began to feel that by now, she knew what she was doing in front of the camera, and that it was time for her to dive into more challenging and demanding roles than the constant nice girl from next door. And in 1944, she got just that when Warner Brothers intended to remake Bette Davis' star-making vehicle of Human Bondage. Eleanor Parker knew that Mildred was the kind of role she had been waiting for. Director Edmund Goulding, however, was not so sure. At first, he wondered why a remake of Human Bondage was necessary in the first place, stating, "There's only one actress in a generation who can do it, and it hasn't been a generation since Bette Davis did it." And when he finally agreed to do it, he felt the part should go to Ida Lupino instead of Eleanor, saying about her, "She's lovely and obviously a fine young actress, but to follow Bette Davis?" Eleanor Parker ultimately had to do 3 screen tests for the role of Mildred, preparing extensively by reading the original novel various times and taking accent lessons.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Go off home and mind your own business and let me alone.
I was never frightened or nervous about it. I knew it was right. I knew this was what I had been working for. Edmund Goulding would not direct the tests himself, but after he finally agreed to look at them, he was completely blown away by Eleanor Parker and immediately agreed to direct her. Later, he would call her the greatest talent since the young Garbo. However, a large part of Hollywood remained skeptical after the announcement that Eleanor would do Of Human Bondage. Columnist Sheila Graham simply asking her, "Young lady, aren't you a bit presumptuous following Bette Davis in the role she made famous?" Bette Davis herself, on the other hand, had no problem with the remake of Human Bondage, writing to Eleanor, "When I played Mildred, the whole town said I wasn't the type. I hope that Mildred will do as much for your career as she did for mine." So there was quite some buzz around this new version of Human Bondage. But it seems that for Warners, it was a bit too much buzz. Still uncertain if it would be the breakthrough for Eleanor Parker or destroy her credibility as an actress, they kept the movie on the shelf for now and put her back to projects that, according to them, suited her better. She was given her first official leading role opposite Dennis Morgan in the domestic drama The Very Sort of You, which garnered her again overall good notices, and then was cast again as another nice girl in another World War II drama. What seemed to be just another routine part actually became what she later called her first true breakthrough, playing John Garfield's supportive girlfriend in Pride of the Marines. Eleanor later remembered how much she learned from her co-star. "When I first acted with John Garfield, I thought, he's not doing anything. He was a big star, but I couldn't help wondering, can he really act? He seemed so ordinary while we were doing the scenes. Then when I saw the rushes, I realized that the camera loved him. He had a quality, a wonderful power that really only seemed to come across on screen." Pride of the Marines was both a financial and critical hit, and the first true A-movie of Eleanor Parker's career. It did maybe not turn her into a celebrated leading actress, but it finally put her on the map. The role garnered her respect as critics called her quietly affecting and graceful yet spirited. One newspaper simply said, "For 2 years she played minor roles until Warner Brothers discovered she could really act." This new success encouraged Warners to finally release Of Human Bondage in 1946. However, the buzz around Eleanor Parker's casting had by now died down, and people looked at the movie with more distance, and were largely disappointed. While some praised her work, negative comparisons to Bette Davis were ever present in almost every review, and most critics felt that Eleanor Parker was out of her depths and just a pale imitation of a far more exciting original. In the end, it neither made nor broke Eleanor Parker's career, instead creating a rather disinterested shoulder shrug. It wasn't terrible, but it also wasn't great. Warners consequently felt that they could continue to slowly build up Eleanor Parker's profile, pairing her with Errol Flynn in the comedy Never Say Goodbye and another remake of a 30s drama Escape Me Never. One of her most joyous experiences during this time was when she was cast in the very thought-after leading role in Voice of the Turtle, which had been a long-running Broadway hit with Margaret Sullivan. Reviews of her work were very positive, and she then received top billing for the first time in her career in the mystery drama Woman in White. Eleanor Parker had worked her way up from supporting parts in B-movies, to supporting parts in A-movies, to leading roles in B-movies, to finally leading roles in A-movies. But the truly big breakthrough for Eleanor Parker had still not happened. Even when she finally got a greater variety of roles and was not stuck to the same kind of nice girls roles anymore, it became clear that Warners had no real idea about what to do with her. In Hollywood, studios always aim to put performers in a certain box, let them find a winning formula, and then repeat that again and again. But Eleanor Parker was set vehemently against this. After all these years, she had finally achieved a certain artistic level, and she was unwilling to make a step back again, often being put on suspension when she refused parts that she felt would not advance her career. While Warners tried to find out how to get the best use out of her, Eleanor highly enjoyed the fact that she had no definite type and could therefore easily play all kinds of different parts and characters. And while columnists like Luella Parsons and Heather Hopper were big supporters of her work, stating that Eleanor can play anything, her jumping from genre to genre also made it hard for many to get a full picture of her as an actress and a person. And more columnists began to openly wonder, who exactly is Eleanor Parker? Her work gave no clear answer to this question, because she was so difficult to pin down in her performances and didn't have any identifiable mannerisms on the screen, like for example Katharine Hepburn or Bette Davis, that would make it easier for viewers to circle distinct characteristics. When talking about Eleanor, newspapers mostly referred to other actresses as reference points, and she was constantly described as some kind of variation of Ingrid Bergman, Patricia Neal, Myrna Loy, or Margaret Sullivan, as it seemed impossible to define her on her own terms. And while many other actresses likely would have done their best to avoid this kind of anonymity in their work, it was actually quite the opposite with Eleanor Parker, who enjoyed the fact that she was able to avoid a clear picture of herself. It means that I have been successful in creating the characters that I've portrayed, that I'm not just a personality who is seen in a variety of roles. When I am spotted instantly somewhere, it means that my characterizations haven't covered up Eleanor Parker the person. I prefer it the other way. And Eleanor Parker not only preferred this lack of recognition in her work, but also in her private life. I never go to nightclubs and skip parties. I don't like them. It seems to me that most of the people at these affairs are unhappy. They must have some escape from themselves, I suppose, and find it in crowds. For me, there's too much good music to hear, too many books waiting to be read, and thank heaven, so much work. Right from the start of her career, Eleanor Parker preferred to be a private person, only noted for her work on the screen and not for what she was doing off the screen, and never available for any big personality profiles or long interviews, causing many columnists in return to consider her rude and uncooperative. Something that was, however, strongly denied by everyone who worked with her, from technicians to co-stars and directors, who would always emphasize that she was actually one of the most cooperative actresses in the business, but that she had simply no interest to campaign her work or herself. I've never been one to toot my own horn, and I don't like public appearances that are about me. I never know what to talk about in an interview. For me, it was always about the work, not fame. Going unrecognized is a blessing in terms of one's private life. I believe it possible for an actress to have a personal existence of her own. Eleanor Parker displayed this need for a personal existence of her own, especially in 1948 and 1949. At a time when she began to get more interesting parts and projects, she deliberately slowed down her career after she had her first child. As much as she loved her work, her family would always come first. I would never sacrifice family for my career. Pictures are my great love, but if they ever interfered with my husband or my children, I'd stop working. Eleanor obviously did not stop working, but she continued to slow down her career whenever her private life took priority and often refused projects that were offered to her. For example, The Hasty Heart, which was done instead by Patricia Neal, a new and celebrated Broadway actress lured to Hollywood by Warners, who now got the kinds of more prestigious roles that might have suited Eleanor Parker as well. But of course, it was not long before Patricia Neal left Hollywood again, broken and disillusioned. After spending more time with her family, Eleanor Parker started a new decade opposite Humphrey Bogart in the action movie Chain Lightning, and it seemed that she was back to the old routine wife/girlfriend/nice girls roles. However, her next project would finally be the real breakthrough she had been waiting for since signing with Warner's 9 years earlier. Screenwriter Virginia Kellogg, who received an Oscar nomination in 1949 for writing the James Cagney classic White Heat, was interested in presenting an authentic look at the situations within women's prisons. To fulfill her mission, she pulled some strings, acquired a false identity, and was locked up for several weeks in different institutions. Her observations and conversations with various inmates and matrons would then become the basis for a movie script called Caged. Most Hollywood studios usually considered such prison movies as B projects, not really important, cheaply made, nothing for any major contract players, and certainly no awards contenders. Warner's, however, saw Caged as a possible throwback to its classic gangster pictures of the 30s, like I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang or Angels with Dirty Faces, but with a new spin for a new decade. Plus, Warner's felt that Caged could fit perfectly into the line of the socially relevant movies that became more and more popular over the last couple of years, like The Best Years of Our Lives, Gentleman's Agreement, and most of all, The Snake Pit. Allegedly, Joan Crawford was the first actress to lay her hands on the script of Caged, and also the one who contacted Eleanor Parker about it, who later said, "Joan Crawford has gone out of her way to help me. She told me about Caged. She said, I read a script that isn't right for me, alright, grab it. But you go and see producer Jerry Wald. I did, he said I was wrong for the part. So I saw Jack Warner, and he said, they don't want you for this." Jack Warner was not lying here. Director John Cromwell, who had worked on movies like Since You Went Away, Anna and the King of Siam, and of course, the original of Human Bondage with Bette Davis, initially wanted Wanda Hendricks for the female lead in Caged, a naive young girl whose experiences in prison turn her into a hardened woman, but Eleanor Parker was determined to get this role for herself. Sensing that this was finally the chance to prove her versatility once and for all, and turn her image as a nice girl upside down. She again agreed to do a screen test, and like she had done with Of Human Bondage, was able to convince her director. The role of Mary Ellen was hers. Despite the seriousness of the topic, the making of Caged was a very pleasant experience for Eleanor Parker, who also fondly remembered her co-star Hope Emerson as a sweet, gentle lady who played the piano for us between scenes. After the shooting was over, Eleanor also wrote a letter to gossip columnists to denounce the expected rumors that a set full of women had to be like a boxing ring. When the picture went into production and the word was circulated that 60 women were working together in the cramped space of a prison set, that they were not allowed to wear any makeup, that their hairdressing was nil, and that these conditions were going to prevail for 10 weeks, there was a good deal of masculine wagering about how long it would be before the scratching and biting began. The announcement may come as a bombshell, but the stark truth is that there was not one unpleasant moment during the entire shooting schedule. There was no strain, no irritation, no boredom. We 60 women worked as a team and enjoyed it. I absolutely adored making Caged. It was a great part, a compelling story, and what a wonderful time we had. When Caged was released, reactions were pretty much the same as those to many other Eleanor Parker movies. Mixed. Many critics praised the movie for its realism, for a cast of women that really looked like prisoners, and for its serious attack on the judicial system. Others, however, felt that Caged was too negative, too merciless, and most of all, too familiar. As one review said, it has its share of sadistic guards who believe the rubber hose is the solution to handling all of the criminals. It has a prison superintendent who wants to turn the institution into a rehabilitation school rather than a cage, but whose hands are tied by the political red tape. And it has a couple of other little touches that are guaranteed to turn up in any picture about a jail. In general, Caged was seen as just another female prison movie, compared to the likes of The Godless Girl and Prisoners way back in 1928, Paid with Joan Crawford, Hold Your Man with Jean Harlow, or Ladies They Talk About with Barbara Stanwyck. The fact that Caged basically recycled all cliché-ridden storylines shown in other prison movies in the past caused some critics to say that Virginia Kellogg could have saved herself the trouble of her intensive research.
Ouch, baby. Very ouch.
However, Eleanor Parker, like so often in her career, overcame any negative reactions to her movie and was unanimously applauded for her work. As one review said, Eleanor Parker gives the performance of her young career. Her metamorphosis from a simple girl drawn innocently into a tragic situation to an adult woman is an exceptionally complete characterization. With this assignment, the actress steps into the select circle of great dramatic stars of the screen. Other reviews called her three-dimensional, honest and skillfully shaded, and predicted that her performance would land her an Oscar nomination. Eleanor also received the Best Actress award at the Venice Film Festival for her performance. One of the reasons why critics reacted so positively to Eleanor was that the realism of her work seemed like a perfect answer to the acting style in European movies, which became more and more popular at the time due to their lack of Hollywood artificiality. Columnists extensively covered how Eleanor was right in the middle of the prison riot scenes and also complimented her for dropping her beauty for the sake of her part, stating, "Caged was the acting plum she had long been awaiting. It offered a challenge many actresses might have refused, since throughout the film she wore no makeup, drab clothes and straight hair." Following the release of Caged, Eleanor Parker was also much more available for interviews than ever before, clearly aiming to get the most out of her sudden acclaim, and she publicly condemned the attitude of many other actresses who worry more about their looks than their work. How can you act if you're thinking, is my head in the right position, chin down, mouth closed, hair and makeup right? Where's the camera? I am still not aware of the camera. I don't know one camera angle from another. That's the cameraman's job. I worry about the acting. Eleanor Parker would even have liked to show more realism in Caged. Just like her character Mary Ellen, she was expecting a child at the time of shooting, but the censors put a firm stop to any attempt to display her pregnancy in the movie, causing her to complain, "The screen has always tried to avoid the pregnant woman. It looks silly when she is shown with a slim figure. Motherhood is the most wonderful thing in the world. Why should it be hidden?"
In those days, you couldn't even knit or crochet a bootie.
In a movie?
In a movie, because then they'd say you're pregnant. No, I'm not making this up. This is absolutely the truth.
But Eleanor Parker was also very honest that Caged was not always completely realistic. Warner Brothers wanted to pretend that she really shaved her head in the scene for better publicity, but she refused to go along with this lie and instead publicly praised the work of her makeup artists. So Caged had finally confirmed Eleanor's arrival as one of Hollywood's major dramatic actresses. As she said, "Nothing seems to happen for years, and then everything happens at once." That's probably because no one could think of anyone who has ever done a role like that before. Luella Parsons simply said that 1950 was Eleanor Parker's year, and this career success couldn't happen to a more deserving or nicer girl. What was especially noteworthy about Eleanor's acclaim for Caged was that she finally came into her own as an actress, as this time she wasn't compared to Eleanor Powell or Margaret Sullivan, but only judged on her own, columnists even saying that from now on, newcomers would be called another Eleanor Parker. And finally, Eleanor was ready to be seen as herself and leave a bigger impression as an actress. Don't think I'm not flattered to be compared to these people. They were all great. It's just that I'd prefer to be myself and to have others think of me as myself, no matter how insignificant that may be. So after talking so much about Caged and how Eleanor Parker's performance was received, what do I think of it? Well, to make matters short, in the Best Actress lineup of 1950, Eleanor Parker is definitely not just the 5th nominee. Her work in Caged is riveting, touching and powerful, and it contributes to the excellence of this category just as much as her more well-remembered co-nominees. For me, Eleanor Parker always feels like a slightly theatrical actress, who can appear a bit artificial, a bit too 50s if you know what I mean, just a bit too much. This acting style can occasionally be rather distracting if it's not suited to the role or the environment of a movie. But if this style fits her part, then Eleanor Parker could compete with the best of them. And Mary Ellen is simply the perfect vessel to bring all her talents to life.
I've been so lonely the last 2 weeks. Those other women, the way they talked to me, the awful things they said.
The character fits Eleanor Parker like a glove, and she's able to capture all its facets throughout the entire movie, bringing believability and attention to her early displays of youthful terror, just as well as to her later moments of spite and decisiveness. In her role, she mostly benefits from her beautifully expressive eyes and face that can so easily shift messages and meaning, bringing an inexplicable tension to her first scenes without saying a word, introducing her character in just a few short moments and laying the foundation for everything that follows.
Don't think I'm not grateful, but I don't want to get mixed up in anything. I don't think boosting's the only way to get along when I get out of here. I've got to do it my own way.
At the age of 28, Eleanor Parker also never feels out of place as the 19-year-old Marie, because her first scenes work so well in bringing not only fear, but also confusion to the role. An insecurity in the face of a well-oiled machinery that treats people as numbers and individual stories as files and figures. In this aspect, it's very easy to feel sympathy for Mary Ellen, but Eleanor Parker earns the sympathy without asking for it. There is a delicacy in her work that makes her helplessness palpable every moment she is on screen, but Eleanor Parker also portrays how the weeks and months in Mary's new life are slowly changing her. She has excellent chemistry with all her co-stars, especially because she shows the shift in all the relationships, from trusting too soon to fearful and rebellious, from insecure and out of place to vague friendships and understanding.
Glad to meet you.
Got news for you. She's all right.
Mary Ellen often feels like a symbol, the bearer of the message that Caged wants to bring across, but Eleanor Parker creates a living and three-dimensional human being. There is a disarming openness in her work, a willingness to express every emotion to the fullest without going overboard. She has countless big moments that never feel showy but perfectly balance desperation and anger with quieter scenes of sudden hope or destroyed expectations.
Mother! Mother, come back here! You gotta take him! You gotta take him! Mother, come back! Mother!
The change in Mary Ellen might feel a bit sudden, but this is more the screenplay's fault than Eleanor Parker's, who still manages to find small steps of development nonetheless, letting her face become harder and harder and her voice more secure, changing from a constant shivering and doubtfulness to a self-assuredness and spiteful dominance.
I'm a big girl, and this isn't my first year away from home. Her name is Marie Allen. If I said no to Kitty, I'm sure not going to say yes to you.
In Caged, Eleanor Parker stunningly demonstrates how innocence and goodness can be turned into bitterness and hardness, how desperation and fear can only exist for so long before they become resistance and rejection. As I said, there is no reason to dismiss this performance or to forget it when it comes to this lineup, as Eleanor Parker very often reaches the same heights and complexities as her celebrated co-nominees, showing the vast dimension of her talents and rightfully entering the 50s as one of Hollywood's major dramatic actresses.
For that $40 Tom and I heisted, I certainly got myself an education.
When she lost the Oscar to Judy Holliday, Eleanor Parker again reacted in her typical style. Judy Holliday certainly deserved to win. I would have hated to get up in front of all these people and say something. If an actress does the best she's capable of in every picture, she should have no regrets. I think it's possible for a performer to set too high a value on the Academy Award. I'd like to win it, of course, who wouldn't, but it will never become an obsession with me. With the success of Caged, Eleanor Parker felt that she needed to be in more control of her career. She wanted more great roles like Mary Ellen and had no interest to return to whatever projects Warner Brothers was coming up with for her. But she also wanted to make sure that she would have time enough for her children. And despite being very grateful for the opportunities the studio had given to her, she did not see this freedom at Warner's and declined to renew her contract. Caged had given her new confidence in her own talents and also had sent her a clear message, that she herself had the power to shape her career. She had carried Caged on her shoulders without a male co-star, and it was the biggest critical hit of her career so far, and also made more money than her other 1950 releases. She clearly didn't need a Humphrey Bogart or an Errol Flynn to be a success. She therefore decided to sign a one-picture-a-year deal with Paramount that would also give her the freedom to work with any other studio whenever she wanted. And this was clearly the best decision she could make, as the 50s saw the biggest peaks of her career, beginning 1 year later with the Paramount production Detective Story that would garner her another Best Actress nomination. But this is a story for another time.